Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episodes. We will discuss on climate change and global alliance. We have our world famous speaker, Mr. Daniel from Transhumanist Party. We have Mr. James Eid from Eid Foundations. So, what you want to discuss about climate change and the global alliance? Why global alliance is important for climate change, for solving climate change issues? Uh, Mr. Daniel, what you want to discuss?
Well, it is a global problem because the Earth is a vessel in space, as it was originally identified actually back in the 19th century by a guy named Henry George, who said, look at our spaceships sailing through space. And he was the first guy, I believe, to identify that the Earth is a spaceship sailing through space. It took another 100 years before Buckminster Fuller came up with the idea of Spaceship Earth. Of course, he wrote a very famous book called Operating Manual for Spaceship Earth. And I believe we are all crew members. Spaceship Earth has no passengers because we are threatening the delicate balance of ecology and climate systems on the Earth. And in that case, you have something which is kind of akin to what they call lifeboat ethics. It's not something people like to talk about, but in the case where you have a lifeboat situation, you have to have one guy who's in charge of telling people what to do. And if people disobey him, they're threatening the entire lifeboat, and extreme measures have to be taken. It doesn't always involve throwing the person overboard, but it could. The captain of a vessel is akin to God, basically. And there are other things about the law of the sea that vessels in distress are legally bound to render aid to other vessels. So these are just two important tenets of maritime law that I think globally are starting to come more and more into current everyday application. Now, we've lived a very uncontrolled kind of civilization for thousands of years. Every time you wanted something new, you could just go over a hill and discover a new forest or a new lake, and no one was there. Sometimes people were there, but it didn't matter. It's like, we have more weaponry, we could claim it, it's ours. So it was basically a very extractive based and consumption based civilization. But now we are coming to the end of this lifestyle, for better or for worse. I think it's actually for better because we are now also able to open up the resources off the planet. As you can see, my flag, Manifest Destiny 2.0, we are on the verge of becoming a Kardashev 2 level civilization where we are tapping the energy output of our local star, the sun. And by doing this and using the resources in the solar system, which are basically radiation blasted hunks of rocks in a vacuum. So there's not a lot to mess up out there. We can only really improve the flourishing abundance potential for human life by doing this. But this is all by way of saying we need to think globally, think Spaceship Earth, and act at the level we live at, namely our local communities. There's a term for this called glocal, which is kind of a portmanteau of global and local. The word glocal is kind of a clever word. So actually, if you think and act globally, you'll be kind of getting the best of both worlds. And why is local important? Because, well, even though young people feel like they're going to live forever, and you feel like you can just meet everyone in the world and make friends with them, research by anthropologists has kind of said, no, it's a number of around 200 people that you can really form close, significant bonds with. The kind of bonds where if you saw them at a restaurant, you would just plop down at the table and start chatting them up, and they wouldn't mind and you wouldn't mind. You'd both be happy. So this number has a name, this number, about 250 people. It's called the Dunbar number. I've talked about it before, probably talking it to death. but I think we are on the verge of a talent economy, like Sharif names his show. And it's a world talent economy made up of local Dunbar community tribes. We have the potential to loan each other tools at the local level. And we also have the potential to loan each other our talents at the local level. There are systems where people can trade hours of their talents with each other, and it's a flat, untaxed transaction. Even the IRS says, no, we don't tax those kind of transactions. Go ahead and have a have a talent lending library, if you will. So if we combine tool lending libraries and talent lending libraries at this local kind of neighborhood block Dunbar level, I think we're going to see amazing progress on not just the climate issue, but on the spaceship Earth biosphere issue. Because this is a closed cycle ecology, something we have not been able to duplicate successfully. People have tried to have a closed ecosystem and make it work, and they haven't succeeded yet. So we better take care of the one we have. We may have already damaged it beyond repair. I'm hoping that's not the case. But in order to test this, we really need to sponsor each grid square of ground and survey it and report citizen science kinds of initiatives into the global nervous system to see what progress we're making. And with that, I will hand off the talking feather. That's my introductory remarks. Thanks again for inviting me.
Mr. James.
Thank you, Sharif, for the opportunity to speak about this topic. Obviously, as Reverend Daniel told us, this is really an important topic, and we really can't talk about it too much because it wasn't that long ago that a senator held a snowball up on the Senate floor and said, we don't have climate change. We don't have, he was in denial. The global warming was what he was trying to deny by holding up a snowball and confusing weather with climate, and which is an easy mistake to make unless you know better. Climate is a system of weather systems, and if you affect the climate, it affects weather systems. And the people that are trying to breathe the air based on the Canadian wildfires in the Midwest right now know that if you make our air toxic, there are health consequences. So we learned when we were dumping pollutants into the streams and rivers that this had an effect downstream. It caused cancers and it killed off flora and fauna. And these things had to come to a stop. We had to legislate them to come to a stop because people would do it unless you stopped them. If they paid a price, then they stopped doing it. But what you're talking about is a global alliance. I often refer to as a global community because my foundation is based on building communities. And I think the Dunbar number is very important. But it doesn't matter how small the number is. If each one of those people in that have a Dunbar number in your community, each one of them has their community. And if you can change yourself, you can change the others within your Dunbar number. And who knows how many others can be changed. And this is how I think progress is made. It spreads out from the bottom up rather than is dictated from the top down. And I think the more people that are aware that, hey, we used to think that the rivers were an inexhaustible supply, and we've learned that they weren't. We thought that the ocean was an inexhaustible supply, and we're finding out that it isn't. And we thought that air was an inexhaustible supply. And now many of us, not all of us, but many of us have realized, no, we can't keep pouring toxins into the air and not end up breathing them. They don't just disperse after a certain point. They get recycled back into our lungs. And that's when we wake up, and that's when companies start to form. But, in the United States where I am, two of our C words are competition and capitalism. But there's two other C words that I want us to think about is cooperation and collaboration. And that's what it's going to take because this is a global problem. And we have to collaborate with one another. The scientists in one country have to speak to the scientists in the other. We need to have technology help us find some answers. Technology alone is not the overall answer. Changing the way we think about ourselves, changing ourselves. Every little bit that you do as an individual will add up if more and more individuals do that same thing. So each one doing a little bit adds up to a big effect. And this is what we want to emphasize. Everybody has a role to play in this. And I love the idea that, we cannot any longer be a consumer society only. This is the thing where we thought that If this runs out, we'll just get more of it. Well, we're finding out there isn't more ocean. There isn't more rivers. There's coming a time where there isn't more water. And water is life. So what happens when the only drinkable water contains toxins? And we shorten our lifespans. We have miserable lives because we cannot find fresh, good drinking water. And this is not science fiction. This is science reality if we keep going the way we're going. So thank you for having this important discussion, Sharif, once again.
For today's sessions, I want to discuss more on global alliance which is important for solving this complex problem. For individual countries, possible to solve these climate change issues. But there is an issue. You always find that from developing nation, they complain that we do not get enough support from G7, G20, or North America. How we can solve this problem? So, how we can improve our relationship, our trustworthy relationship around us to solve this climate change issue? Mr. Daniel, what's your response?
It is a global issue, and we do need more cross-fertilization between the so-called developed world and the so-called developing world. I would say the whole world is the developing world right now because we don't know how to solve this problem as a unified, humane civilization. And I say humane because I think it's time that human rights need an upgrade to humane rights. And we have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that came out in Paris in 1948. There was a majority of nations that signed on, affirmed the truth of those 33 articles. And I think article number 1 is basically the right to life is predominant. Number 2 is that government is properly derived from the consent of the governed. Government shall be based on the will of the people. These are American experiment ideas. I think it was a great triumph that a majority of nations did this in 1948. And, the 100th anniversary of this Universal Declaration is coming up. It's only how many? Well, 2048 is, do the math. That's like, I know I'll be 88, so I got to start using life extension technology if I want to see this 2.0 declaration. But something else in the declaration is freedom of movement, that people should have the freedom to move around the planet. Right now, we don't have that good freedom. We have boundaries everywhere. We have conflicting laws about migration. Refugees are in terrible circumstances. People don't have country identification. And I think there's like 500 million people that lack identification paperwork. So these are basic problems that we need to solve to bring the developed and developing worlds into greater harmony. Now, I happen to be a big fan of something called amateur radio. It's a worldwide community of people that use off-grid two-way technology to make friends and solve problems and talk about things and understand other cultures. And there's about 3 million people in the world community that are licensed amateur radio operators. I have what's called an extra class license, which gives me the maximum transmitter power. I can go up to 1500 watts on all the different bands. So I studied hard and memorized all those test questions to be able to get that privilege. But there's lower privileges. You only need to answer about 30 easy questions to get your technician license. And in fact, there are radios you don't even need an exam to use. Citizens band radio is popular. It still is used by a lot of truckers in our country and other countries. There's a new radio service called General Mobile Radio Service. You just pay a licensing fee for a call sign, and then you get to use that. So why do I bring up this global community of amateur radio people? I think that this community can function as kind of a lifeboat captain citizen science passport office. We can actually aggregate all of this lifeboat planet data through the citizen science community, make it available in what's called open source, free and open source. That means you're free to share it, just so you attribute the source of it and you don't modify it and make money off it and do all kinds of non-open source kinds of things. It's a term that comes from the software community because there's something called source code for a program, and that source code can either be open and shareable or it can be closed and someone's trying to charge you royalties on it. But anyway, back to I was talking about the Dunbar number, where you can form about 150 close trusted relationships. So what happens if you start multiplying 150 times 150? Well, after 3 multiplications, you get to it's either 3 or 4 multiplications. You get to about 3 million. And then another multiplication, 2 more, you get close to the number of people on the planet. It's the old idea that we're all 6 handshakes away from anybody on Earth. It's like, you know somebody who knows somebody, and you carry that 6 times. And the old thing was Kevin Bacon. For some reason, the actor Kevin Bacon got in 6 handshakes you could like be shaking hands with Kevin Bacon. So that kind of stuck as a meme. It's called like the Kevin Bacon handshake experiment. But I think we've got local community blocks which have about 150 people. Now, you're not going to be like best trusted friends with everyone on your block of your neighborhood. Maybe someday you will. Maybe you'll be in an intentional community someday. Maybe even one on the oceans, a micronation or a society by contract. But until that happens, you can make those multiplication jumps of the handshake experiment. And I think amateur radio, not just amateur radio, but any kind of off-grid shareable, communication technology. There's actually a way to do texting within a radius of about 1 to 500 feet on your cell phone that's not even subscribed to a service. Everyone's got an old, cell phone kicking around. It's like, what can I do with that? Well, there's 2 things you can do with that. You could put a geolocation mapping app on your phone, and you can put this Bridgeify app on your phone. Now you've got the ability to locate anywhere on Earth with a simple 3-word phrase, and also to talk to anyone that's nearby. So what good is this? Well, we can start organizing citizen science things like these tool lending libraries, like these talent lending systems, like the local exchange trading service, the LETS system. We can do surveys of the soil. There's a fun contest that lets you test how healthy your soil is with a pair of buried 100% cotton underwear. You bury that for 60 days, you dig it up, and if your soil's healthy, guess what? There's nothing left. The little soil bugs have eaten everything. If your soil's dead, well, it's just going to look pretty much the same. So there's a citizen science survey, because soil is really, we don't just grow food. We grow soil, and the food grows in the soil. So if you want to solve hunger, you need to grow the soil. And soil depletion has been going on worldwide. It's for a long time. We got a temporary kind of burst in soil production, but it was artificial. It was the green revolution. A lot of ammonia and petrochemical based fertilizers were pumped into soils, stimulated a lot of crop growth, but now those soils are not sustainably nourished. We've done things like spraying Roundup, which is a very hazardous chemical, has glyphosate in it, and that kills all the soil bugs. So we've got a huge job of soil repair to do, and it's a worldwide problem, and it's a citizen science problem. So get your amateur radio license, consider that your world passport to do citizen science with anyone in the world, and let's start little free libraries that aggregate and curate all of this important life-saving data. I like to say in the Transhumanist Party, which I'm running for vice president of in 2024, that we're the party of big data for big life-saving. And I don't think any other party is emphasizing facts and science and evidence-based policies like the U.S. Transhumanist Party does. So there's my political plug for the day. I always manage to tie in the campaign to whatever the topic is of the day. So, so did that answer your question? I think amateur radio is this worldwide science bridge passport, Sharif. I really think we can
So
make
James,
progress with that.
Yeah.
So James,
My turn, Sri? Okay. The motto of the International World Chess Organization is "We are all one family," and I think that's one way we can change the way we look at things, and to think of us as human beings. And I know that I grew up on the border of Massachusetts and Vermont, and I was on the Massachusetts side, and when I would walk my dog north, at some point we were in Vermont. But in nature, there are no boundaries. You don't know when you're walking in the woods, when you're across state lines. And this idea of nations having boundaries is an artificial man-made concept. It doesn't exist in nature. And if we start to think about natural laws rather than human-made laws, although human-made laws have their place, but natural laws really are what we really want to think about when we're thinking about a globe, a spaceship. And it's a way to change the way we think about things. And for example, just looking over Reverend Daniel's shoulder, you see the stars and stripes, and you see the stars in a different way than you've ever seen them before, most likely. And so you can start to think about it a little differently, because many people in the United States think about the stars in the sense of we are stars, we are great. And we had a me generation where we all thought about ourselves. It's the stuff of comedy, late night shows and that sort of thing now. But it was a real thing, and there's still elements of it when we're just thinking about ourselves. And it's a dog-eat-dog and world, and you have to look out for yourself. And it's a zero-sum game. And if you can get ahead in the game by stepping on someone else's neck, all these thoughts are counterproductive and unnecessary. But we've actually been taught this in a capitalist society, like the one I grew up in, where you're taught to achieve, and that achievement is all that matters. And cooperation is necessary unless it's useful to you getting to where you want to go. And then you can disregard them, those that help you get where you want to go once you get there. And it's a phenomenon that we see over and over and over again, and it's pretty tragic. But there is one thing I wanted to say. I wrote it down. Now I can't read my handwriting. But I do think that the main thing is to think of us different, to change the way we think, which is that we are in this spaceship all together. And how do we get these global alliances? Well, how about China and the United States? We had our Secretary of State from the United States visit China, and we talked. We spoke about commonalities, common interests. The President Modi came from India to the United States to talk. Now we also have Russia invading the Ukraine. So these are real problems. I think the idea is to talk, to communicate, to share our common issues and how we can work together to solve them. These are good things when the countries speak to one another and talk as though they were equals, because turns out they are. And when we are invading others to take what they have, when we're doing that, we're engaging in that sort of thing. Some people get proud of their country when they do that. Well, this is attributed to Einstein, but many things are attributed to Einstein that he never said. But I think he said this is, this kind of, this is not patriotism. This is jingoism. When you just want to what's best for yourself, and you don't need a brain for that. You don't need frontal lobes. You just need a hyperactive spinal column, because it's not thinking it through. If you think it through, man, no, being superior to another country is not what it's all about. Defeating another in battle is not what it's all about. It's coexisting, helping each other exist, leading lives of quiet dignity instead of lives of quiet desperation. This is what it's all about. And it's our task as individuals to change the way we behave, the way we think, to change our minds so that we start thinking in a different way. about our fellow human beings, so that they're as important to us as our next door neighbor. Because in a very real sense, we're all neighbors. Thank you, Sharif.
Thank you, Mr. Jamsit. Mr. Daniel, global negotiations is a major important factor for bringing climate finance, which is important because solving this complex problem, we need more finance. So, what do you think? How we can improve these negotiations abilities and how we can work more with financial institutions who can help emerging economy or the global community to solve this complex problem?
It's another great question, and we have to look at unconventional financing sources. I can think of a couple off the hand that I think are not used enough, and one of them is naming rights. You look at you have auditoriums and things that are named after. Usually, rich people pay some money and they get their name slapped on something, and even though they're dead, they're happy somewhere, and their whole family says, "Oh, look, there's our family name on the thing. Aren't we all proud?" So the naming rights is even though they're mostly bought by dead people, they're mostly for the living people. So we can create naming rights contests. That's another powerful thing is gamification, making something a fun kind of game or contest. Look at the world record, Guinness Book of World Records. People will do all kinds of crazy things basically for free just to say I've got the world record for so and such. So look at all there's two sources of human action that basically don't cost anything. Just there was a group called the International Star Registry, and they said you can name a star after someone for $100. Of course, the astronomical community does not recognize this, but the fact that someone has a book and they call it a star registry and they update it every year and put it in the Library of Congress, these guys are making decent money. I mean, from doing this. So why don't we have an international biosphere square registry where you can adopt a square of land and you can get it recognized as you are the steward of this square and you are sharing the citizen science data about this square of land. And I propose doing this with the 3 meter by 3 meter, 10 foot by 10 foot squares that are in the What 3 Words app that I was talking about earlier, this location app that actually assigns 3 dictionary words to each square on Earth. You can also do fun things like write a story using the 3 words for your square. You can do all kinds of fun creative contests and games. Okay, so naming rights is one thing. I talked about the Let's system, the trading of talent hours between people in a community. That is a form of unconventional funding that is not being used. We have barter, which is not really used. Barter transactions are often done off the books, untaxed. Sometimes I don't know about the tax status of barter. I think barter clubs are subject to tax, but individuals trading things person to person are not. So check your local laws and regulations. As always, the standard disclaimer: I'm not your lawyer. I'm not your financial advisor. All these disclaimers apply. So yeah, there's tons of other alternative creative financing things. Now, some people like alternative currencies, like crypto coin, Bitcoin being the most famous one. There's been a lot of other ones that have followed on, but now financial laws and regulators are starting to say, wait a minute, what you're doing is an unregulated security here. It's actually not a legitimate currency, because currencies are supposed to act as a store of value, and they're not supposed to be super speculative and volatile like a lot of these cryptos are. So the whole crypto thing needs to be figured out better. Then we had the non-fungible token craze. We had people creating digital pieces of art or digital properties and then charging exorbitant putting exorbitant prices on them. And it was sort of like the tulip mania that happened in in Holland, I think, in the 1600s, when you could trade a house for a single tulip bulb because it was such a beautiful color of tulip and it was so rare. And of course, the NFT thing sort of crashed back down. That bubble burst from its big heights. So yeah, we don't want to do things that are unconventional financing that's going to blow up in our face. But we do need, as a global economy, you know, the dollar right now is the global reserve currency, and that was maybe a good idea for the post-World War order. But now we have the ability to print unlimited dollars, basically a monopoly on debt. It's really debt slavery capitalism. We really need land-based capitalism where we pay fairly for location values that are involved in the economy. This gets into the whole Georgist picture of things, which we could do another whole other show on geo-libertarianism or Georgism. But really, as Bucky Fuller said, the global monetary unit should be a kilowatt hour of renewable solar power. This would make sense because everyone uses electricity. You can't counterfeit electricity. You can't print as much electricity as you want. And the other thing this would spur is greater grid interconnection, because the more you interconnect the grids, the lower the price of electricity goes, the more available it becomes. It's kind of like the fax machine effect. You know, the value of one fax machine is basically zero because who are you going to fax stuff to? You know, but the more nodes in a grid, like an electric grid, that become interconnected, you get a increase in value. So we can leverage that effect by having a global kilowatt hour currency standard. The other thing I really like is pricing things in time units of people's individual income. This is a little bit of a maybe hard to visualize at first, but instead of going into a store and something's priced at $1, what if it was priced at 10 minutes? And you go up to the clerk, what's this 10 minutes mean? He goes, oh, well, how much do you make an hour? Well, I make $6 an hour. Okay, 10 minutes, that you would pay $1 for this because 10 minutes of your time is worth $1 to you. Then a rich guy comes in the store. He picks up the same thing. Oh, what's this 10-minute price tag? Well, how much do you make an hour? I make $60 an hour. Okay, well, your price is $10 because that's a fair sliding scale of your actual income. So a pricing system like this, which has been adopted in things like toll roads and collecting parking or traffic fines, and it actually is more fair. It eliminates inequality just structurally. No one has to impose it with the force of law. People can adopt this thing voluntarily, and it actually increases the throughput of the business. You will get more customers and make more money using this system. It doesn't seem like it at first, but it's been demonstrated that you can actually generate higher profits. The other thing we need to do is make all economic activity as accountable and transparent as possible. We don't want to have what are called negative externalities, where you pollute a river or you give someone cancer. You're doing some bad effect, but you're shoveling that off on someone else. And that often can be addressed simply through existing law. We have a thing called tort law, which is when you cause a harm to another party, that party can take you to court and get that harm redressed or restitution for that harm. So those are just a few ideas for funding this Spaceship Earth progress that we need to fund. And thanks for the great question. And stay tuned for more ideas.
Mr. James.
Yes, Sharif, thank you for this question. And also, I thought when you started out, it was interesting. Just a moment, let me get rid of this. And I think you know, you point out, like, there's what about the G7? Why don't they do more? And you know, I run a charitable foundation, and you know, there's a supply and demand problem. There's always more demand than I have supply. So people are always asking more, as if, you know, and I don't blame them for this, but they think that, you know, I must have all of these resources. Why don't I share them? And I do to an extent, but if I give a lot to one, I can't give a little to many. And so there's a lot of times when I got into this, I thought I would be able to say yes a lot, but I end up having to say no quite a bit. And so this is, I think, an important lesson for people that see a wealthy country, what they perceive to be a wealthy country. And why don't they do more for poor countries? Well, there's a lot of competition for those limited resources, and these resources are limited. There's not enough. Any one country does not produce enough for everyone. And this is why we have to work together. But there are things that we can do. I liked some of the things that Dan was talking about. Was like, when we constructed the World Hall of Fame for chess in Miami, you could buy a brick. So I had a brick with my name on it. And there were many bricks with many people's names on it, and you could buy a brick for a certain amount of money. And so maybe certain countries can do something like that, leverage the beautiful scenery that they have, and have somebody, corporate entity, be able to put its name on a tree, or I don't know what, I'm making stuff up as I go along, but to in turn give them whatever that company produces for free for a period of time, and negotiate this kind of way. Or we could have a centralized body that says, we give tax breaks to people that are doing things good for the environment. Well, why not extend that globally? Why not have a centralized body that says, okay, if you do this for the globe, for the environment, you will get this at a discount, and we'll arrange this because some countries have a lot of this and need a lot of that. And so why not? And it's a distribution problem, but there are distribution experts who can manage this in a way that makes it all very easy in this day and age. And I wanted to say something about the crypto. That's totally speculation, but there's a difference between digital and cryptocurrencies. Digital is making the world very small. When I help countries in remote locations, I do a digital transfer of money, and they get it at the other end. I think my question is why do they have to wait after I press send, and they don't get to receive right away? It's held someplace for a period of time. So what's up with that? We've got to make this a little bit more not only transparent, which is a wonderful because much of the digital currencies, what's great about them is they're not transparent, but what's also the downside. We have to make it instantaneous, so no one else is profiting by being the middleman off of these transactions. Well, you say, why would somebody put it in place? Well, it's the way we cooperate as a world, instead of thinking of us as individuals, or as an individual bank, an individual company, or a group of companies, or a group of states, a group of countries. Think of us as the world. And the world should be interconnected. There should not be connectivity issues any longer. And the companies that put connectivity in remote locations should be rewarded. There should be a process for rewarding them. And now, you don't do this by individual basis. You have to do this by collective will. And until the collective will reaches a point where it says, yes, this is a good idea, let's cooperate. Let the US and China work together on a global connectivity issue. That would be world changing. Will we ever get to that point where two countries that are arguing with each other over this and that, over sweating over the small stuff, will they ever get to the point where they say, yes, we should connect the globe and not profit from it? Just connect everyone because it's good for the world. If you could do it, why wouldn't you? So, I think that it's all about changing our perspective rather than competing with one another. trying to get ahead, to coexist peacefully, and so that we can all live lives with dignity, so that we're not living in scarcity. And the globe, if it works together, if someone holds their hand out, there's another with their hand out to take it. If we lived in that world, so much of the pain and suffering and the misery would go away. But as long as we're trying to step on each other to get ahead, we're not going to make it. And I think our history has proven that. We're never successful, only in the short term. In the long term, this always leads to bitterness and conflict. And, we have an income inequality problem in the United States right now. 1% owns so much of it. And what we call the middle class, is getting squeezed. And this leads to resentment. And right now we have the writers on strike. Some of our most creative writers, are on strike because, they're not getting fairly compensated for their work. So these issues are not going to go away overnight unless we start changing our minds about what is important. And if we're always chasing the almighty dollar and judging everything by its profit, then we're going to keep making mistakes that end up poisoning our air, poisoning our water, until there's no place to hide. In London, when the pea soup fog took over, the rich could move away to the countryside, where the poor had to breathe the unbreathable air. There's no place to move anymore. It's getting to the point where, however rich you are, you're all going to be breathing in the same air. So we've got to change the way we think. Thanks.
Thank you. This is an excellent discussion. Mr. Daniel, what's your concluding remarks for today's sessions, and how we can improve this global alliance, how we can work together?
James, we're so glad that you're on the Team Global or Team Glocal. Great thoughts there. I can't help but think to one of our greatest American experiment promoters, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, who we're coming up on the 60th anniversary of his coup that took him from us. I think it was a deep state coup. But I think the speech that got him killed was one of his last speeches. It was at American University. He was giving the what do they call that speech that you give at a graduation? I'm blanking on the name.
Commencement.
The commencement speech. Okay, thank you. And there was one part of that speech that was so powerful, where he said, we all love our children. We all are mortal. We all breathe the same air. We all inhabit this small planet. And he was calling for basically an east-west détente, exploring space together, solving the world's problems together. And of course, the military-industrial complex couldn't hear of it, and they pulled the levers they needed to pull, and they got their guy in who was all about war profiteering. And sadly, that's, we had a general in America, Smedley Butler, and he wrote a book called "I've Been Against, War is a Racket." And he said, I was a gangster for capitalism. They sent me around the world killing people, and it was just to give these corporations a way to, to make money, maybe some people would call them obscene profits. War is the ultimate obscenity, and war profiteering is ultimate obscenity squared. But what we need to do now is peace profiteering. I love this phrase. I heard it today on Ubiquity University was having a series about U.S.-China relations, and right now, we're very bellicose about China. Oh, they're a dictatorship. Oh, they have no human rights. They want to, they're coming here to steal all our secrets. They're coming here to buy all our land, steal all our stuff. Well, are they? I mean, they're a great people. They're a 4,000-year-old civilization. We're just we're like pretty new to the picnic, compared to Chinese civilization. So we could learn a lot from the idea of peace profiteering instead of war profiteering. And that's what I want to do with this campaign is put out ideas for peace profiteering and using AI and big data for big life saving, for big lifeboat saving. We've got big problems to solve, and we're not going to solve them, as a bunch of captains on the same ship, trying to fight with each other and kill each other and steal parts of the ship. That was the old way, and that way is not going to fly. That dog ain't going to hunt, like they say down south. But if you do the math, I was talking about the Dunbar effect earlier, about how there's this magic number of around 150 people. And so I did a little bit of math. What happens if you multiply 150 times 150? Well, you get 22,500. That's about the population of the town I grew up in. Manhattan Beach. I think it was about that population when I was born. Maybe it's more like 35,000 now. So you multiply again, you get 3.3 million. That's about the number of amateur radio people around the world. Look at that. There's a handshake system. You multiply that again by 150. Well, you get about 500 million. That was the number on the Georgia Guidestones that said keep humanity's population under 500 million and stay in harmony with nature. Of course, someone blew that up. They didn't like that idea. It wasn't the Georgia, New World Order dictator stones. These were guidelines. This was advice, people. Okay, so you multiply 500 million by 150. Wow, you get a really big number. Then you get about let's see, where was I at? Okay, yeah, that's 75.9 billion. So that's a number like 10 times the current population. Well, you know what? We could support a population like that in the solar system as a Kardashev level 2 civilization, using the entire energy output of our planet and the resources of steel. And the asteroids are half of them are stainless steel. They're nickel iron. That's a good grade of stainless steel. That's the thing that wiped out the dinosaurs when a piece of stainless steel the size of Mount Everest, came in at about 22 times the speed of sound. And that could happen again. And there's great human minds that are working to not have all of life's eggs in one basket, to not let the light of consciousness go out. And we need to support these thinkers and these people that are working. Elon Musk gets a lot of criticism. Hey, he's on the autism spectrum like I am. Give us neurodivergent people a break. Come on, And James, you mentioned about being able to send. I think you were talking about being able to send money peer to peer with no middleman. Is like, why do I have to wait when I make this transaction? I want to give money over here. Well, that's what the Bitcoin protocol was designed to do. It was designed to let you transfer, energy in the form of wealth with no middleman. What a concept. The American experiment is kind of the idea. One person, one vote, no middleman. The Protestant Reformation, no middleman between you and the divine, So the American experiment is one of decentralizing power back to the individual. And I'm proud to be a part of that experiment, and glad to have a soapbox here on a show like you have, Dr. Sharif. So I think I covered most of my concluding thoughts, but yeah, just become civically engaged, become scientifically engaged, become a global citizen, get your world passport in the form of an amateur radio license. So there's my call to action.
You are a great advertiser for amateur radio. Anyway,
we'll see.
So, Mr. Jamsit, what's your concluding remarks?
Well, I want to thank you again, and I do think not only is the global climate, obviously we use the word global, and the global alliance, or as I say, global community, but we're talking the same language there. Using different words, and I think that this is essential to and again, instead of competing, cooperating, and collaboration is a lost art. And just because we look a little bit different, or We speak a different language. I think, it doesn't matter what language you speak. It doesn't matter what country you're from. We're all in this together. And as soon as we realize this, then our behavior changes. And once our behavior changes, things have a shot. We got a shot at doing this. But we're running out of time. This is this talk is ticking, and it's not slowing down. It's accelerating. We're getting to the point of no return. So we have to adopt this. And can we? Evolution is too late. It takes too long. We're not going to evolve into a new species that is more conducive to coexistence. We're going to have to change our minds. The way we're wired right now, it's a tough order, because we're wired now to look out for ourselves. And we've got to think about helping each other. Because, if one sinks in this global environment, we're all sinking. It's just the way it's going to work out. As I say, the rich will have no place to go. So, the way we have to think about our future together is different from the way we've thought about our future in the past. And the present is the gift. It's time to act. We must act, or it will be too late. If it isn't already, and I don't believe it is. I think the human beings are incredibly resourceful and have the ability to change the way we're walking our path right now, which is one doomed to destruction. But what we can do is just step to another path, a new path, and walk to a brighter future. And that brighter future includes looking out for the next guy, looking out for the person beside you, even if there are many people beside you. And it's like, thinking about what's good for all. And, when we're thinking about, the things are this change of autonomy, instead of like monarchies and kings and even popes and bishops and priests and all that kind of top-down kind of thinking. Yes, this is a great democracy in the United States is a great experiment in spreading one member, one vote kind of concept. And it's wonderful, except there's a social contract that goes along with it. It's not what the country can do for you. It's what you can do for the country, as JFK told us. And we think we need to be reminded of this. Ask not what the country can do for you, but what you can do for this country. And extend that to think of the globe. You think I'm too small? I don't matter? You do. This is the point. If everyone makes a small change, the consequences will be enormous. And thank you again for the opportunity to speak on this subject.
Thank you, Mr. James Eid, and thank you, Mr. Daniel, for your continuous support for World Talent Economy Forum. I request all of our audience, please share our content with the government agency, corporation, and academy. How we supporting our global ecosystem in South Asia. Hopefully, in the future, we can bring more business incubator, more government agency, and more corporations to help and grow business in that particular area. Talent economy is the way how actually we can enhance the capacity uh, of human resources in emerging economy. That we have a lot of talent, but somehow because of brain drain, because of lack of transparencies and uh, lot of unhealthy competitions, we lose many of our talents. So that's why our objective, we want to support more talents. We bring around thousands of entrepreneurs in our ecosystems. So hopefully we can bring millions of peoples and they may change their communities. We just develop our whole ecosystem, and your idea, your thought, your advice, your guidelines is priceless. And my students, my community, my peoples, they always learn how to uh, how to enhance the capacity. So that is the objective of World Talent Economy Forum. Beside dialogue, we organize many conferences, we organize academic activities, we organize business incubations, we publish a lot of research paper. So those who want to support in our business incubations, our academic initiative, you can join World Talent Economy Forums and you can support our projects. Thank you. Bye-bye and take care.